All these kids with rabies running around my town.
Greetings and salutations, and welcome to Hacker Slash, a horror movie review podcast dedicated to telling you whether a horror movie is a total hack, a joke, a waste of time, or a slash. Totally killer, pun intended. My name is Chris, and I am your resident slasher enthusiast, and I am joined, as I always am, by our logical robot Dan.
Hey, everybody.
Our resident judge Leah.
Hey, guys.
Our automatonophobiac Parker.
Hello, guys.
And our insane gore lover Alexis.
Hey, everyone.
Welcome, everybody, and let's go ahead and just get into the fun stuff for tonight. So tonight we're actually going to be talking about an incredible movie from the early 90s, and I think this actually might be the first movie we've done for Hacker Slash that is from the 90s.
Really?
Whoop whoop.
I think so.
Yeah.
Go 90s.
Hey, it's my childhood. It's probably when you guys were born, but that's
1994.
95.
90.
97 made the cut.
fine. You were 1 year old when this movie came out.
See, I'm going to put on my wrong generation hat here, but I still remember playing Atari with my brother and like the old school Nintendo 64 and stuff like that. So I was born in 95, but I kind of still have childhood memories of stuff that was like 80s stuff too.
You got lucky.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's the same thing. Like, I have, like, all my siblings are way older than me.
I remember getting to wear all of the ugly 90s clothes, like turtlenecks with stripes.
Or that, like, fluorescent windbreakers.
Ew.
What's
Oh,
this
Or
myth?
overalls.
What's this myth about Janko jeans that I've heard about?
Ooh.
Oh, I hope they're not making a return.
Oh, they are. The comment, yeah.
No.
Oh, that's concerning.
Those are the good old days, though.
Is that a real thing?
Leah, yeah, they were. I was telling Leah at one point, though, I miss those days when you're like a kid, at least when I was growing up. You just wake up in the morning, get the coolest like T-Rex shirt you got, you throw it on, and you're just good to go. As long as you're like a kid still. I'm not talking like high schoolers,
Yeah.
but like when you're a kid, you just got the coolest T-Rex shirt you could find.
I got the coolest Lion King shirt.
There you go.
Find.
Yeah.
I had a lot of, like, flowered shirts.
Same here.
Yeah, I
And
was
pink.
Yeah.
I was living my best fun life, but I was not living my best dress life because I didn't get. My
I
mom only wore
wasn't
dresses,
either.
and I wasn't into that.
No, I wasn't either. I had, like, an overall dress.
Ooh.
It was the ugliest thing, and my mom was like, "It's so cute on you, wear it." I'm like, "Okay, Mom, well, you're making me look like a loser, so thanks."
All right, well, before we get too lost into this 90s nostalgia, let's go ahead and get into the movie for this week. This week we are talking about the 1996 film that is meta horror directed by Wes Craven, Scream.
Woo!
Freaking love this movie, man, and I always forget how much I love it until I see it again. It's just so good. So this movie is, the pivotal moment where the 90s kind of reinvented horror, and it's actually an examination of how horror started to kind of become more self-aware. But Dan, what would you say this movie is about?
Local police marketing gets out of hand by releasing the most expensive anti-teen partying PSA to date.
Awesome. Well, first things first, who had not seen this movie yet?
I had not seen this movie yet.
And only you.
Wow.
Somehow I had avoided it.
Well, I haven't seen it
Oh,
either.
look at that.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I thought you guys knew that already.
I can't believe
Wait,
you
get the
haven't
hell out of
seen
here.
this.
Are you serious?
Yeah, no, I actually haven't seen this.
Ooh, only 60% of us have seen this before.
So Scream is actually a masterful blend of all these masterpieces that came before it, but it came during a time where all the movies preceding this were just kind of regurgitations of each other, right? Horror had hit this point in the 80s where it was just a bunch of, like, it was just a cash cow. And it was the same template matching movie after movie after movie. And Scream came to save the day and kind of add these modern touches that it would take for the 90s audience to embrace it. I don't know how you guys felt about it as people who have been through what horror is now, seeing this for the first time. But the cool thing is that it's self-aware, it's self-deprecating. So this movie created a universe where its characters are us, and it acknowledges horror films in the cinema universe as opposed to just kind of pretending that they're not a thing, right? And pretending that its characters are oblivious. So for those of you who have seen it, so Leah, Alexis, what did you think about this when you first saw it? Or what was kind of like your connection to this movie?
I've seen this movie so many times I don't even think I could count at this point. I think trying to think back to the first time I saw it, I probably didn't understand what it was going for just because I was probably younger. Well, I was way younger. So I probably liked it but didn't really understand it as much. But watching it now, I actually get what it's going for. I'm not going to say I really like the movie, but I don't dislike the movie. I kind of like don't have too many feelings, but I do find it amusing.
I agree. I've seen this plenty of times, and I believe this is probably the first time I've seen it not on TV, so with everything like in the movie, nothing cut out. So I'm pretty sure the first time I saw this, I was terrified. I didn't want to pick up my kitchen phone whenever my parents were out. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, Scream guys, like Ghostface, whatever is calling. But I think, and when I first watched it, I mean, I just thought it was a super scary slasher movie. And then I think I've seen it recently within the past like few years, but I think taking a time out and being able to step back and watch it, I think I picked up on a lot of other cues and just being like, oh, it's supposed to be making fun of other movies.
Yeah.
And then I appreciate it, I think, a lot more than I did previously.
No, absolutely. And the cool thing is, like, this movie, when it was being made, it was looked at like, hey, you know, this is a comedy. But I've always seen this as a horror movie with comedy elements, and I think it's for hitting that exact moment of kind of growing up with this. So when this movie came out, I was about to turn 7 years old, and I didn't see it in theaters, but I do remember going to the movies to see Jerry Maguire with my family and seeing the posters and seeing
Sorry, I'm laughing.
why is that funny? Show me the money. I remember going to the theaters and seeing all the posters and not really seeing what it was about. But I'll never forget the night that I saw this movie for the first time. We were living in Texas, and it was in the middle of nowhere. And this movie scared the hell out of me because when we watched it, it was the first time I'd seen a horror movie with a sliding glass door. And our backs, we had just rearranged the living room so that the back of the couch was facing the sliding glass door.
Oh, that's messed
And
up.
we're in the middle of
Terrifying.
nowhere, and there's a pivotal moment in a line in this movie that like when they discuss like calling the cops, and the killer's like, it'll take forever to get here. We're in the middle of nowhere. And I was like, oh my, we're in the middle of nowhere. And it freaked me out. It was such a good movie. It bonded my family together, and we even named our dog after Drew Barrymore's character in this movie. A little dog named Casey.
Aw.
All right, but what did you guys think about it since you had never seen it before?
Well, I'll be honest. I was kind of going into this movie not really thinking it was going to be too terrifying. I didn't really have too much interest in this movie going into it. But I guess I also didn't know, obviously, what I was getting myself into. When I was younger, the only thing I'd ever seen with Scream, or I guess who you call it, Ghostface in it, was obviously that parody with Scary Movie. Yep. And I could not
Classic.
help when I was watching this movie to think of how relatable it was and what kind of things this other movie was pointing on it, and it had me smiling and enjoying it the whole time. But it still had its moments for that kind of horror aspect, and I really enjoyed it. It was a good movie through and through.
I had a really hard time trying to even figure out what this movie was and what it was going for, because I didn't know what to expect. I'd heard it's, meta, it's comedy, but then one of the first lines that's delivered is, "Can you see me?" And it is like a very chilling line. It's like, ooh. So I was like, wait, okay, are they actually trying to go for a scary movie here, or are they not? But then there was comedic elements, burning popcorn and stuff like that. Like that took priority for a moment before like looking for, etc. Like I had a very hard time finding if this was going to fall more on the comedy side or on the horror side, and it kind of stuck with me for the whole thing. And I had no idea what this movie was. It was like an anomaly of movies that I've seen, and I had a really hard time while watching it even telling how I felt about it, for better or for worse. It was just this movie. I don't know. I had no idea what to think about it until like the end.
Did you feel like you spent the entire movie trying to figure it out instead of just experiencing it?
No, I definitely like stopped at a point trying to figure out where to place it in my mind, and then just kind of sat and watched it. But because it's almost playing off those templated movies, it was like, okay, it's just one of these, but that's the point of it. And so like, I don't know, my mind just kept kind of trying to I don't know, I couldn't stop trying to figure it out. But
There's that logical robot.
I don't know. This
Have
was
you
just an
seen Scary Movie
No.
before? Oh, okay. 'Cause I
You
saw-
haven't seen
yeah.
Scary Movie?
I haven't either.
I'm
What?
actually-
Well, I'm glad, because it probably would have ruined it
It's
for
true,
you.
actually.
It would have ruined
It's
this
so
movie.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think going into it after having seen that movie,
I
was like,
love
oh my
those
God.
movies, though.
Honestly, like I've
They're the
seen
best.
clips like, what's up?
Yeah, totally.
See, I thought that was this movie. And so I was like waiting for stuff like that.
Wow,
And so
wow.
I had
That's
no
very-
idea. Yeah, I had no idea.
He actually did turn to me and say, he's like, wait, I thought this was like the Scary Movie one. I'm like, no.
Yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, so this
Oh my
talk
gosh.
about it being a comedy, I went into it already knowing it was supposed to be frightening because I saw the comedy side of it, like the other one that literally made fun of all of it. So It was pretty good.
It's definitely a different movie.
Yeah.
It's definitely different.
I just can't. Oh my gosh. Were you just waiting the whole time, the whole hour and 51 minutes to say, what's up?
Yeah, or something like, I don't know. I was just like waiting for all these moments, and there's a few just chilling moments. I won't say specifically that, like, as I was leaning towards the comedy side, just jolted it back towards the horror side. But then it didn't stick with that, and so it almost felt inconsistent. But that was the point of it, and so I don't know. It was just odd.
I want to say how we picked apart Children of the Corn a little bit. I think that's kind of how I picked this one apart.
Are you kidding me?
Slightly, yeah. Well, because I mean, I'm kind of with Dan on that. There were some points that I thought were like hilarious, and then some other points that had pretty good frightening moments. And then at the same time, it was also very suspenseful, and it was like a crime mystery.
I just don't think this movie and Children of the Corn belong in the same sentence at all.
I agree.
This where this lands to me is there's a restaurant that Leigh and I loved in Iowa, the Zombie Burger, and it has this burger there called the Walking Ched.
Oh, man.
The buns are deep fried mac and cheese, 2 different types of cheeses, like a pound of burger meat. It's got cheese. It's insane, and everyone gets it at least once. And after they eat it, they say,
I didn't even finish the whole thing.
after they eat it, they say, "I'm happy I've had it. I will never get it again." And that's very much how this movie rang true to me. Like, I'm happy I saw this. I don't think I would ever see it again, but not because it was bad. But not because it was bad, though.
Here's the thing, though. I feel like this, and this is weird coming from me, but I feel like the more times you see this movie, the more you catch on to.
Yes!
And appreciate it, right?
Yeah,
Kind
like
of,
it's
yeah.
one of those movies.
Lee's
Like
my girl.
I've seen it a ton of times, but the more I do watch it, the more I pick up on.
Yeah, Dan, I'm sorry. I disagree with you too.
No, that's
I would
fine.
watch
That's
this
fine.
again.
No, that's fine. And I told Leah while watching, I said, I feel like this is one of those movies you could watch 10 times and see different things every time. I don't know. This was just such... I can't give it a shank,
Yeah.
you know? So I'm exploring still currently, I think, where this movie falls for me.
I just think it's I did not expect this from you with how open-minded you've been about the whole horror journey and how much this movie is basically the horror movie journey.
It sounded
Right?
like a
Like-
disappointed parent. I didn't expect this from you. I'm not
I
mad.
expected
I'm
more.
disappointed. Yeah, no.
I didn't get it. Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, so now we know how you felt. It sounds like after watching, you're still kind of confused. Not about like what happened in the movie, but where. I think that's the pivotal difference here, though. It sounds to me like you spent some time during this movie focused on what to think, as opposed to just kind of letting it happen to you.
Yeah, I think when watching this, when I tried to just kind of just take the movie in, the funny parts weren't funny to me. They were just on the nose, and then like the scary parts weren't that scary. So it just felt like 2 muted tones on either side of the fence. Like, I noted the funny. I'm like, haha, and it was like a chuckle, but it was never more than like a haha, yep, to me. Like, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure I laughed out loud.
I know,
I did
and
too,
I
actually.
know I'm wrong on this, but it was like 2
know.
muted tones.
It was kind of sad. Like something would happen, and I'd actually laugh, and he's like, huh. I'm like, that's it. Come on. I'm like,
like,
Because
I
he
don't
was
know.
trying to
It was
figure out
like-
whether it was
it was
supposed to be
like-
funny or
I was
not.
watching this
Exactly.
by myself.
I don't know. For me, I was like, I get it, but is it worth
do you,
getting?
though?
Like, I was like, I get
Right?
it. No, I pointed all
Is
the
it
different
worth
styles,
getting?
this and haha, they playing off this, but it was like, okay, I get it, but is it worth
Oh my
getting?
gosh.
Like, I don't know.
And you know what this feels like right now?
What?
This feels like throwback to our early episodes where you didn't have feelings about
Yeah,
things.
there's
You're
nothing.
just like,
Yeah, this is the
Yeah.
first time in a while I feel like I just watched it and I was like,
Okay.
okay.
oh boy.
Like-
All right. Well, for the rest of you, did you find anything totally surprising or disappointing? It's kind of hard to be surprised the more you see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm still even, like I said, every time I've watched it, I forget who the killer is.
Mm-hmm.
And I still watch it. I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
maybe
me
because I'm so
too.
focused on everything else that I don't pay attention. And I've seen this movie quite a number of times. But I think I was actually disappointed watching it with the acting. But I think it's
Yeah.
supposed to, I think you're supposed to feel that way.
I think so.
There's like 2 characters I can think of that every time I watch this movie, it's kind of like, yeah, I could do without you. But it's playing up to this archetype that is necessary to round things out.
It's true.
So even then, like, there are plenty of movies that we've seen where I really hate a particular character. I'm like, oh, Franklin from Texas Chainsaw Massacre, just waiting for
Oh man,
exactly that guy.
cried every 30 seconds.
Ugh, so bad. Plenty of movies we've seen where I've hated characters, this had characters that mildly got under my skin, but not enough to make me actually dislike them or the movie. So
The ending was a surprise and fantastic, which
Oh,
was good. Like
you
that
have
was
a thing to
that was
say.
very surprising.
Oh, yeah.
I did not expect the end that it had by any means.
interesting. I would love to hear more once we get into the
Yeah,
second half
definitely.
of this,
Can't
how
wait.
you went on that journey and like where you
Definitely.
like what your predictions were for it. So what did you guys expect in this movie?
So I thought this was going to be like a super meta on the nose, like hour and a half long killer chasing victim with goofy stuff happening the entire time, like purposely tripping and him just somehow not catching up and then getting up and running. I thought that was it for like an hour and a half, just walking through every single trope one after another after another. So I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't that, but I was definitely way off of what I thought.
You know what
What it
you
was.
just described?
What?
Student Bodies. Hilarious meta comedy from the 80s. So good.
You know what else it reminded me of with the killer chasing and not quite getting?
Texas.
Yes.
Yes.
Texas Chainsaw, when he just happened to not be able to get them. Wow,
Mhm.
so annoying.
How about you, Parker?
Well, I don't know. I was going into this movie. I think, I wanted to say that, or at least think that I was going into it thinking it was going to be very intense, kind of like that movie Hush, a little bit with the home invasion and whatnot. And like Dan said, I was also predicting that it's pretty much just going to take place around one like household, one person just trying to escape, and try to figure it out overnight. But it turned out to be a lot more than that, and I'm really drawn to like crime mystery and things like that, and it just really pulled my attention. But like Dan said too, I was also very on the fence about like, because it's not one of those movies that's gonna necessarily frighten you, like scare you. It's not the scariest thing to watch in my opinion. However, I was just really drawn to all this, like whether you could call it comedy, satire, or horror. So it was pretty good.
It's not scary for the kid who was born after caller ID was really a mass important thing. You don't know about caller ID?
I don't know about caller ID.
What?
Star 55.
Okay, wait,
No,
yeah,
Star
even I knew.
67.
Oh,
Yeah, even I
67.
knew.
Wait,
Yes,
no.
you'd prank call people and you're like, don't forget to do star
No.
67.
Actually, I do know what caller ID is because my dad, everybody he calls is just caller ID because he just doesn't want people to call him back. Yeah,
I don't think we
that's-
know what you're talking about.
I don't think
No,
so.
is it not the same caller
so,
ID?
So caller ID is for landlines, and when your phone rings, it used to not have any indication of who was calling for what number, no name, nothing.
It would just say unknown most of the time.
Right.
If you even had a phone that was
If you
capable
even
of
had
it.
that, yeah.
and that's what it's like when my dad's calling me. It says caller, or no, it says caller unknown.
Oh,
That's weird.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I actually found out too how you can actually change that setting online.
He
Yeah,
doesn't
well,
want you to know who he is.
What?
Right?
Well,
how we're
there's
getting-
more to it, but I won't get into it.
That's how we're getting into Pretty Little Liars territory there.
Ooh, I love that show.
I
So do
love that
I.
show too.
I do
Guilty
too.
pleasure.
There is no guilt about it.
No. None.
Did you guys find this movie scary?
Like I said, when I was younger, I definitely was super scared about it. But I think now, I think it just holds a different place. I think some of the scenes are pretty scary. And then you think about it in real life, like if someone was staring at me through a window. So I feel like, or even like the sliding glass doors that you mentioned, my parents have those, and I still am afraid to look out of them for a number of reasons. This movie being one.
As I'm staring out of the sliding glass door right now as we record this.
On
We
the
had a-
second floor.
We had a terrifying sliding glass door at home. The one where you can see from out of it from downstairs. So scary. I would say this movie probably scared me when I was way younger the first time I saw it. Watching it now though, like Alexis said, I can see why it would be scary, and there's parts where I'm like, if I hadn't seen this before, it would probably scare me, but I knew it was coming, so I'm like, okay.
hmm
Yes, no. There was moments where, like, can you see me? Like, that's very chilling in a couple, like, imagery spots that I can't say because we're pre-spoiler. Then I'm like, oh, okay, we're going for it. This is a scary movie. And then there was the on-the-nose stuff, and that's the type of stuff in other movies that take me out of horror movies. And so I kind of felt like I kept getting reset on that. So I'd say overall it was not scary to me, but there were moments that could be.
I'm kind of with that because there were some moments that were really frightening, or I wouldn't say, I mean, it was frightening enough, I guess. But there were so many other things that It was almost like a wave. Like one point would be kind of comedic and the other point would be kind of frightening, and it just kind of kept shifting between these two different areas. But it had my attention the whole time. So
See, that's what I love, though. I love that this movie infuses that much humor. I think it was a defining moment where you can see that a horror movie doesn't just have to be someone chasing someone and you like them trying to make you feel tense all the time. I remember when I watched this movie the first time, I remember being scared, and then as I got older, I started picking up more and more of the like adult humor and the irony in some scenes, especially as they start discussing other horror movies in this. And there's like over 15.
Oh yeah,
horror
there were
movies.
so
Amazing.
many references.
I love it, and I love a good reference. But how did you guys feel about how the ending was executed? I know, Dan, you said you liked it quite a bit.
I liked it a lot, especially like the last 15-ish minutes, 20 minutes. Super entertaining, kept my attention. I felt like had that not been the end, this would have been a 100% hack in my mind. But that I enjoyed the ending quite a bit, and it was much different than I anticipated.
Which is rare coming from you. I remember you and Leah have both said that horror movie endings are just almost impossible to nail.
Yeah.
It's true.
I really liked the ending because it just seemed to get really intense, and the ending just, I mean, well, what I thought was going to be the end, it just kind of kept going and going, and pretty soon you're at that point like, oh, this must be the climax of the movie, and it certainly was, but then it definitely had my full attention towards the end of this movie, and it was very entertaining.
Oh, I love the ending. I think throughout the storyline, I was trying to figure it out at the whole, I don't know. I think it was delivered a different way, but I'll talk about it later. But at the end, I think it grips you a little bit. It takes you away from it being kind of like a comedy, and you're like, oh wait, what is going on? What is all this drama? And then it's like, bam, bam, everything's scene.
Mm-hmm.
So I definitely enjoyed it.
Yeah, there are definitely points where everything gets a little bit more serious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that intensity.
Yeah, I really liked the ending a lot. I think for me it was probably the best part of the movie.
Hell yeah.
I would agree. I couldn't tell what was going to happen with it. I couldn't guess. Most movies, that's why I don't like a lot of endings of horror movies, because you know exactly how they're going to end. Insidious series. But in general, like this ending was like entertaining, trying to guess how it was going to end and what turn it was going to take next.
I think you also go along with the characters too. Like the characters are like, who did it? And you're like, okay, who did it? And you're trying to figure it out too, which I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really love the character development in this movie because again, it was kind of like a crime mystery, and it's like you have a certain number of suspects, and you're like, ooh, which one could it be? And
Like
they're all
Clue.
talking to each other
Yeah.
about it. So the whole
Totally.
time you're thinking, oh, I think it's definitely this person, and then things happen. You're like, but could it be?
Mm-hmm.
So I loved that back and forth.
Classic Scooby-Doo whodunit.
I love Scooby-Doo.
Oh my gosh.
So do I. I used to have Scooby-Doo bed sheets.
Really?
No shame. No shame.
Yeah, no shame in that.
Yeah, I remember this movie being the first like big deal horror movie of my lifetime, but I also remember it being the first time that I was wondering who the killer was. Like in every other movie that I had seen up until that point, and I'm sure there were plenty beforehand that may have approached it this way, you just know that there is a killer, and that killer's identity does not matter because they are the killer. There's no mystery behind like who's behind the mask or things like that. Would you guys, I know Dan, you said you wouldn't watch this movie again, but
I feel like if I did, I would need just a lot of time to like let this movie fully sink in. And if I watched it, it would have to be like a couple years from now. I don't think this is something I'd turn around in a couple weeks and just rewatch.
man, I watched it earlier this week and I was ready to watch it again today. Yeah.
I think it holds some rewatch value for sure. I mean, like I've seen it a million times, and to me, it doesn't get old at all. I think it's a well, I don't think it is. I know it is a cult classic.
Yes.
Woohoo! But yeah.
At what point does a movie go from cult classic to just classic?
What's the difference?
Because like this is a widespread icon.
It's true.
So is it a cult classic?
Cult classic, I think, is more of like it's highly recognized within a certain grouping of people
yeah.
versus a
Okay.
classic being universally recognized as being like
I
that.
would say it is a classic then.
I think most people consider it to be.
Actually, push my. I'm just kidding. I don't know why I was being nitpicky. I was just curious at that, like at what point it would shift.
That is my interpretation
Yeah.
of what that
Yeah.
what that is. And honestly, though, whenever I hear about like classic horror movies, Scream is never in that conversation.
It seemed like it was. I think that was part of my struggle. Is this seemed to be a cousin of the pillars of horror. You know, The Exorcist, Texas Chainsaw, Halloween, all of those. And this seemed to be like a cousin to those, because The Mask and Halloween stores are one of the first things you see growing up in any costume shop ever, and you see them every year. Mm-hmm. So I think it was trying to separate that in my mind a little bit more.
I'm gonna my suspicion is that it's a generational thing. And I think the further we get from this movie's release, and as well, not you young whippersnappers, but maybe Alexis and I getting older in our lives, at some point this will become a classic. But because it's something that's happened so recently, and because it's still on TV, because there was a fourth installment that was made just a few years ago, I think it's one of those, it's like you can't really identify it as like, yeah, that's such a classic.
Yeah, with the TV series too, I think.
Oh, I love the TV series.
I haven't seen it. I need to see it.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited to watch it.
I don't know. I kind of thought it different. I thought it was closer to a classic too, because when I was younger, I just knew that the Ghostface was like one of like the top killers out there that I knew of when I was a kid. In fact, I remember, Dan, I think you just mentioned costumes. When I was younger, I was actually Ghostface for one Halloween. And it was one of those masks that like...
yeah, wearing a mask for a movie you haven't seen.
It was one of those masks that had like this pump you would carry in your hand, and it'd be like blood like coming down
with
the
the little
face.
pump knife. And they'd always break it and make a mess.
The pump knife. Yeah, it was so cool. And I had that thing for so many years. I just found it in my attic, and I was like, what is this
Should have
doing
wore it
here?
tonight.
Oh, no, I
That'd be
don't...
hilarious.
Why
I have to
didn't
find
you?
it again, honestly. It's somewhere, but I know I still have it somewhere.
I'd be curious because this was one of my first Halloween masks too. When I was little, and I didn't even know it came from a movie or anything. I was too young to even try to, guess. I was probably 6, 7 maybe, and it was one of the first masks I just happened to gravitate towards. I was like, I want this one, but I can still like distinctly smell that plasticky mask smell.
Yeah.
and like you could feel the mask get so humid because it'd have one little thin slit where the mouth was supposed to be able to breathe out of, and you couldn't. Like it was
It
suffocating.
makes you think of the killer's perspective in these movies.
So
Real
funny.
committed to that
Yes.
slaughter, huh? To deal with all
Yeah.
that smell.
Yeah.
I feel like if I put that mask on, I'd be like, nah, this is too much. I'm
Yeah.
done.
I never really wore a mask for Halloween, so
I
that's a
didn't
great.
either.
Now I know what it's like to be on the other side. I have a. I mean, hopefully I'm not taking away from your fact or fiction later, but I was reading online about the mask. So when they were scouting for locations for the mask or whatever they wanted to, well, I guess when they were just scouting for it, they were in a child's room. I guess they were trying to find who had the rights to this mask, and they couldn't. So they actually just did the droopy eyes. I'm assuming it was just more of a ghost mask. So they did more droopy eyes and just recreated it a little bit, which I thought was pretty cool.
I don't know why I'm thinking about this all of a sudden, but if this was just like a cartoon and it was like maybe rated like PG, I just feel like this could have been like a Scooby-Doo flick.
Could have been. I think you could very easily take
Who's
away
that
a
killer?
lot of this.
Mr. Johansson.
Yeah, totally.
If it wasn't for you whippersnappers,
And your rabbit dog or whatever.
you meddling kids.
You
that guy.
meddling kids,
meddling
yeah,
kids.
not rabid.
Rabbit dog.
Yeah.
You rabbit
Scooby
dog.
isn't rabid.
The deputy sheriff with the shotgun. All these kids with rabies running around my town.
This suddenly becomes To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh man. Halloween. I remember I was Zorro for Halloween once. It was dope.
Yeah.
I was
love
always
having a sword.
princess.
Yeah, I was like Esmeralda. My mom literally gave me a mole right here, and it was weird. And then put glitter on my eyes. It was
Yeah.
horrible.
I was Zorro, the Red Power Ranger. I was Darth Maul several years. I was Zorro again, and then I was a pirate, and then I just never did it again.
See,
I still
think-
dress up.
Well, what did I do? Okay, yeah, no, I could tell you that I was Scream. Oh, it was Ghostface. And then I was Freddy Krueger. And then I was Jason Voorhees. I was never a Michael Myers, but I would have totally wanted to pull that
You
off.
have the frame
You
for
do.
it. You need to dress up like that this year.
Maybe,
Please.
maybe. Well, I typically do something with my brother. We try to twin up because he's smaller than me.
He can be little
mom.
Tommy.
What?
He can be Tommy from the first movie.
Tommy from the first movie?
Yeah.
I'll have to look it up because I haven't seen.
Tommy Doyle.
Oh, no, I don't know if I want to bring that up right now.
You've never seen Halloween?
Oh, great.
Everybody run.
I've only seen bits and pieces
This is
of
great though.
only
It's a
seen-
good mix.
I've only seen bits and pieces of the Rob Zombie one, and I didn't like it.
Good.
Okay,
All
you're
right.
on a
You
good
are
track.
redeemed. So I do recommend you
God.
watch that before you watch the Halloween movie later next
Yeah.
month.
The Rob Zombie version?
Oh.
No, you need to watch the original movie before we all
Yeah,
go see the
for sure.
movie coming out.
Okay, yeah, I'll make it on the list.
Oh my gosh. Did you guys know Wes Craven almost wanted nothing to do with this film?
Really, I thought he went up to what's his face.
You know, he did end up seeking it out, but when he originally saw the script, he saw how violent this whole opening scene was supposed to be, and he was done with that. He's like, I don't want to go into that again. The only reason he went to the helm of this franchise was because of his devotion to his fans, who said that his work on Last House on the Left was some of the best work he'd ever done. And he was like, you know what, let's do another kick-ass movie for the fans. And that was it.
I love him.
Yeah, I miss him. Rip. All right, well, now that we know that there's maybe some mystery to the way Dan feels about this movie, let's go ahead and just kick off the scoring and put on some more pressure for him to call this a slash.
Here we go.
Before we get to that point, though, let's talk about the body count and the gore levels. What is the total number of people who died in this movie?
The number is, lucky number, 7. 7 people die in this movie.
That's a good number for a slasher.
I like
Yeah,
that.
and in a
My
mixture
favorite
of
number.
ways, too.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to talk about the gore level of them?
All right, so I would, for a slasher film, I would definitely give this a low gore level rating. It's low compared to others. There is the first scene that was supposed to be gorier, but they had to take it down a little notch, or a lot, I think, because I'm, looking for all the blood there is. I didn't know what expectations I had because I've seen this movie a few times, but I give it a low.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I was happy, too. It seemed to be a mix of kills. I know in slashers, sometimes it's like, he has an axe, and everyone gets axed to death.
Oh, yeah, there's
and
plenty of different ways.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so I did appreciate that about this movie, too, that it wasn't just the same, it's a knife 7 straight times.
Yeah, I think this movie, for my preferences, ended up being like the right amount of gore. And again, that's low because I'm not a gore lover, but I appreciated that at least. But let's go ahead and get into the scoring. Scream from 1996, and not to be confused with the failed 80s slasher Scream. Was it a hack or was it a slash?
I'm going to give this one a slash.
What?
Yeah.
Yay!
Yeah,
God,
definitely.
so good. You are redeemed, good sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right.
Total slash.
I'll also give it a slash.
Dun,
Yeah, there's
dun,
no
dun.
reasons. Aaron, //// Dan, which is it? And there was no time to think.
Well, I'll give you some time to think, Dan. I'm going to go ahead and give this a slash. I've loved this movie from the first time I saw it. It was the first big deal in my life, and it's something that even watching now, I can still appreciate in so many new ways. Not only in its filmmaking, not only in its storytelling, but just how much of it is just a love letter to the horror genre as a whole. I think this is, easily top 10 movie for me.
All right, I think I'm going to have to give this one a slash because I also could not articulate why I would give it a hack. And so for that reason, I think I have to give it a slash. And I think it is something that people should see, especially if you love the horror genre in general, because of how much it kind of takes cracks at the genre while still making a movie out of it. And I did find the ending very entertaining. I don't think for me this would make a top 10 or something I would religiously watch again and again or on a yearly basis. But I'll still give it a slash because it was entertaining and there wasn't a lot that this movie did wrong.
All right.
Slash.
Well, that is
Yeah.
surprising, even if it sounds like a begrudging slash.
Yeah,
It's kind of
does.
like, I'm going to go on a date with you because there's no one else, but I don't think you're attractive.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot this movie does right, and there was a lot of entertainment value. And if I try to think about what this movie did wrong or that would take away from that, there's not a lot there to pull from. So I don't see how I'd be able to, give it a hack. So I think it lands in slash.
All right,
It's just an
cool.
odd slash.
Yeah, that's totally fair. So let's go ahead and do this. Let's go ahead and give our listeners a break, and anything hereafter will be spoiler heavy. I think we're all kind of chomping at the bit to get into the really nitty gritty details of this movie. So if you haven't seen this, stop right now, go watch it, enjoy it, even though Dan did not have a really compelling argument for it. It sounds like if you like slashers like me, you're going to dig it. Even Leah likes it. And she is typically difficult to please with movies like this.
It's true.
The gore lover likes it.
Yeah.
And there are no inanimate objects for Parker to be afraid of.
It was great.
All right, guys, we'll see you in a bit. All right, welcome back. Hopefully, all of you listeners out there have actually watched this movie. If you have not, do not listen. If you have not and you don't care, then okay, listen, but don't be mad at us when we spoil a fantastic ending for you. So let's kick this off with why we rated this the way we did. Now, this movie got 5 slashes, even if it was kind of begrudging.
I thought the acting was okay in this, and the gore could have been better, but overall, I think it does a great job at being aware that it is spoofy, kind of. I love all the one-liners that are in there that are, trying to think, let's see, the garage scene where, was it Rose McGowan? She goes, oh, am I supposed to play the helpless victim? And then she's, running, and then there's in the record store, and I think Jamie Kennedy's oh, in a horror movie, this person would be killed off first or something. And then like my favorite one is when Jamie Kennedy's also, I think it's Jamie Kennedy, is standing there and they're all watching the scary movie. And he goes, oh my God, the killer is behind you. And literally the killer is behind him.
Yes, that's one of my
which
favorite
is,
parts.
yes, it is. I mean, it's just, the delivery is amazing. This movie is brilliant. Also, Wes Craven is from Cleveland, Ohio. Whoop, whoop.
What?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Now you do. According to Wikipedia. Like, so I do appreciate that. I do love all the Nightmare on Elm Streets. That movie still haunts me. I do, like, if I have watched that movie even recently, I won't go under the sheets. I won't put the sheets over my head. I'm still, you know, I'm 28 and still scared of that movie.
Oh, you should not play Dead by Daylight then.
Oh, jeez.
That's true.
But also, I really love 90s movies.
I know what you did last
I
summer.
know you did last summer, like Urban Legend, The Faculty, Josh Hartnett. Every movie Josh Hartnett is in the 90s is just like, but even just all the other ones like Jawbreakers, like all of those, 10 Things I Hate About You. Like I love all those movies and I like how they just, you know, do a scary version of it. So yeah, that's why I gave it a slash.
Awesome.
I gave it a slash because I really like mystery crime. This definitely pulled it out, but you can also tell that like among the actors, it just seemed like, especially with the way the plot was and this back and forth between like this satire and horror, that they were just really going to just make a fun movie for people to watch. And for instance, like when Jamie Kennedy, like Alexis said, where oh, the killer's like right behind you, and then the killer's right behind him. I was just, you know, it just kind of, and then here I am watching the movie. It was like watching a movie of a person who's watching another movie who's got the killer behind him, and I'm like, whoa. So it's just a lot of fun and how they kind of played out, like things like that, scenes like that. And then there's so many different nods to other horror films. I loved it. The different nods and the different references. One of my favorite references was when the principal,
Henry Winkler,
he goes out and he's like trying to see who's knocking on his door, and then there's that reference to Freddy Krueger. He's like, "Hey, Fred," and then I noticed the guy was wearing the hat, the janitor, and he had like the sweater
you
on.
mean
I was
Wes
like,
Craven?
I was
the
gonna say that
director
was
of the
Wes
movie?
Craven.
no way, that was Wes Craven.
That was.
Yeah.
That's so cool. See, oh god, see now that would have been so
Brilliant.
much better if I'd noticed that because I don't know what he looks like.
Dan's slowly liking this movie, I feel like.
He's a big name in the horror genre, and
Yeah.
that is so cool that he put himself in it and actually made himself his own reference to one of his own movies. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's perfect.
So, and then the whole nod to like, oh, how to survive in a horror movie, and yet it's still all played out to be the one guy who survives, who's trying to teach everybody else what you do, and you're like, this guy is just ridiculous. He doesn't seem like he's of any sense like sane, but he's the only one that survives, and it's kind of it was a laughing moment for me, kind of.
Not the only one, but he is a survivor. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not the only survivor, but
Yeah, absolutely.
it was awesome. I loved it.
Awesome. I'm gonna add another layer to the movie inside a movie in just a bit. But Dan, have you articulated why yet?
Yeah, I do. So this was a very clean movie. There was not a lot of, like, anything that was rough was purposely rough, so you can't really nail it on a trope because that was the point of it.
Yeah.
So it was a very clean and well done movie for what it was going for. I think how to articulate where this landed for me, it's kind of like when you're with a group of people and they say, let's take a silly photo after the serious one, and everyone makes a goofy face. And then you take a silly photo, and then everyone laughs that it was silly. It's like, I get it. It was just kind of like, haha, yep, it was silly. I think that's kind of that area where it landed to me, where it's like chuckle worthy, you know. But overall, there was a lot that I liked. I did appreciate again and again when characters would come on to camera on the scene with that kind of bump and turn around and run into them again. Like no matter what, even if it was just coming like back from where they just were. That was funny. I like the references to all the movies, and I did appreciate, like you said, that scene where he's watching him in, you know, the whole party scene was very entertaining, and I felt like that was the movie to me. I think what got me kind of mixed up too is with some of the acting, it felt like some people were trying for a funny movie, and some were trying to actually act in like a scary movie. So at times it kind of came off weird to me.
May I ask who specifically you have on either side of that?
The facial expressions from Matthew Lillard. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it felt like he was almost just trying to be so sarcastic in the movie that it would like stick out in like a funny way, and he would just act ridiculous in scenes. And so that was very much like, okay, he's going for this playful, goofy movie. Mm-hmm. But then I felt sometimes like Henry, when he was playing the principal, would have moments where he's like trying to be like tense or like actually go for this kind of unnerving, kind of scary movie. And so it kind of just felt disjointed at times where I was like, okay, some of these people are on board on one ship and some are on this other totally ship, and they're both trying to kind of row next to each other. And it can't. I don't know. For me, it came off odd at times.
Yeah, I thought he was like really encapsulating like Stu's insanity.
He's I don't know. He always comes off kind of weird to me in every movie.
I'm not a
He's like
huge fan
out
of him.
there. Like,
Yeah, he
what was
is.
that movie he was in with the basement people?
I don't even know because I purposely
The
kind of
house
avoid him,
one?
honestly.
Oh yeah, the house one. He's just like, I feel like he's always yelling in
Yeah.
movies. I'm like, stop.
He was contorting his face during like everyday normal conversation. I didn't fully understand why at times. He would just like flare his eyebrows and like scrunch his face while talking. It was just,
Weird 90s teenager boy.
yeah,
I think that's what that can be wrapped up to.
yeah.
Or he just acts like that, right?
Yeah,
Maybe.
probably.
He's just weird.
Yeah, he was like slightly less weird as Shaggy because I think he was supposed to be more like a
Yeah.
stoner. But
Yeah.
like, yeah, I get that. I get that.
I really liked this movie because what it was going for, they did it perfectly. Like, they were going for this, we're gonna kind of make fun of horror movies in our own weird way, and they did it. And like, I think they did it perfectly, and I thought it was really entertaining. I also really liked Tatum. I thought she was very amusing and very stupid, and I loved like every scene that she was in.
I didn't find her super stupid, but I found her like super lovable.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
she's in Once Upon a Time.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
I did appreciate
Yeah.
her death a lot. I
Yeah?
think that's
Yeah.
the only garage door death I think I've ever seen in a horror movie inside like that. And I appreciate
scene
that.
was hilarious.
Yeah. Like trying
I
to
spit
get
on
out.
your garage.
Yeah.
It's not the way I want to go out. How
Yeah.
humiliating.
She's
Totally.
like throwing the beers at him too. That was hilarious.
just the neighbors across the street. Oh shit.
Man,
Yeah.
I want to know
Not again.
I want to know how rock hard his abs must have been to shatter
Right?
that beer bottle. I feel like if I throw a beer bottle at someone, it's not going to shatter like that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was
Sugar
weird.
glass.
Well, I mean, yeah, obviously for the effect of filmmaking,
Yeah.
but like an actual beer bottle, like
Yeah.
we can test it real quick.
Actually, I think I can. If you gave me a second, I could tell you because also at the carnival games, it's rigged, and it's why beer bottles are upside down when you throw the baseballs at them because that's where their strongest point. And so to shatter it, you have to nick the corner to get the beer bottle to break. But if you slam a baseball like square on with it, it typically won't break because they're meant to be dropped. And it's actually the structure of a beer bottle is like actually engineered to resist shock.
Wow.
Facts
And tell
from
me,
Dan.
how come when you pop the top on another one?
Oh, so that is because air compression from the inside, which also fractures the glass. So when there's the gap of air inside and you slam it, it has nowhere to go when it tries to go down, so it blows out the bottom of the glass. So the air compression can
I've
get
never even
released.
seen this done, but also I'm
It's happened to me. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
It either foams up or the bottom breaks off.
And then you get glass everywhere.
And then
like
you
it's-
slip and you get a 4-inch gash in your
Yeah.
arm.
do you have a
Happened.
scar from this or
No, this is my friend.
Oh gosh, okay.
Sad 20s life, 21.
That's okay. I love this movie for so many reasons. I mean, I think on a whole, it's a whole approach in its filmmaking. I mean, first off, let's start with the star power in this movie. This movie employed the same trick that Alfred Hitchcock did in the original Psycho by getting the most well-known actress and killing her off first. Now, has everybody seen the cover for this movie or the poster?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Okay, so you see how it mainly features Drew Barrymore with her hand covering her mouth, and then it has everybody else with the same stoic expression, so you don't know who plays who in the movie. So you think in this movie, as it opens up with her, that she might actually get away. And that is my favorite scene in the entire movie, but you open up thinking that it's going to be her, and then she just dies. And it kind of creates this whole thing like, all bets are off. Anything can happen in this movie. And I don't know if like you guys got that the same way from seeing how that has actually happened since then in horror. But for this happening in 1996, that was outrageous.
I did dig that a lot. It kind of does set that tone for what will happen. And I was very shocked when that happened because since I went in expecting it to be an hour and a half long Michael Myers-esque chase around the house and around the yard, when she was actually like killed and strung up in the tree, I was like, oh, we have a movie on our on our hands.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh my
We
gosh.
have a movie.
It's true.
Oh my gosh.
Who was the actor or the actress from the 1968 or what was it from Psycho? The first Psycho.
Janet Leigh, who was Jamie Lee Curtis's mom.
Oh,
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
The one that was killed in the shower.
Janet
Because
Leigh.
that was one of the, I mean, you said now it's kind of like, or nowadays you would think that's kind of like taboo, like to have like a famous character in there and they just like kill them off like instantly. You're like, whoa. But like in that movie, I was really disappointed to like just, you spent like almost 45 minutes to an hour, and I'm like, she's dead. Great. So like to see that in this movie, it was actually kind of cool. I was like, oh my gosh. And like you said, all bets off. It could be any character in the movie who can die at any moment.
Suddenly you don't know who your leading lady is or who your leading guy is.
It's
and
true.
For Drew Barrymore to go out in that way, right? And to see her parents and just be so close, but her, like, she had been strangled. She can't like
Terrifying.
speak. God, it's just, that was one of the most unsettling parts of the movie.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the mother was like, oh my God, I can hear her. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then
That was tough.
yeah, and okay, first off, I love Jiffy Pop. Has anyone had Jiffy Pop?
I have once.
Yeah, Jiffy Pop is what she was making on the popcorn on the stove.
Oh, okay,
I
yeah.
love that. So my sisters used to make that all the time when we watch scary movies when I was growing up in Texas. And I love the fact that Jiffy Pop, that popcorn is a clock for that entire scene. Because it's all chill,
Yeah.
nothing's heating up, and then as things get more chaotic, things are on fire.
Smoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
didn't
you know
notice
what? And I get that, like, some people are like, "Whoa, why is the mom worried about the popcorn?" But I guarantee you, my mom would not want a fire starting while she's freaking out about where
Yeah.
it might be. So that's a totally reasonable thing.
That was one of the first things I didn't know if it was supposed to be funny or not, because
No.
the father's like, "Where is she?" And she's like, "Do-do-do-do," and like walks off and just takes care of the popcorn. She's like, "Huh? Where is she?" And like, I didn't know if it was supposed to be funny or not.
I think she was just slowly accepting how concerned she should be in that moment when she kind of takes in the whole scene. I mean, if you smell that smoke and you hear that alarm going off, and then you see that this thing's about to start a fire, probably just figure that out first and then wonder like, hey, this isn't my daughter. My daughter doesn't do this. What is happening and where is she? So there's a lot of depth in that scene that I really appreciate.
How close she was to like actually being spotted. It kills me.
Your periphery, man.
So
She
it was a
just
great
out of that.
opening
Yeah.
to this
Yeah,
movie.
I think that was another thing. I didn't know if that was supposed to be funny or not. She was like 10 feet away, and they're just like walking, and like it's like right there.
How does that play to potentially funny?
Because if it's like joking, like 4 feet away, going and they're both rolling around the grass, and they're just like walking in. I think that's why this movie set off on an odd foot for me. I didn't know if these things were supposed to be funny or if it was supposed to be like dramatic, and so I was kind of like, haha. Like, I don't know. It was just weird.
That's so weird because I got no vibe of humor from that at all.
I see. I that's why I didn't know if I should. I think like what was humor in this was such like not my humor style that I was trying to pick up on. Like, was it going for funny? You know, what was she really like 6 feet away from them walking in, and they're just like walking past her, rolling around? Like, I didn't know. I had no idea for half of this.
I don't really think I thought the beginning to be funny. in
Nah,
any
that's
way.
what
Yeah,
I'm
not at
wondering. Like,
all.
how did you get misled so poorly on the first few minutes that by the minute 12 comes around, you're like, am I supposed to find this?
I'm a terrible person.
Did Ghostface fall? in that
They're both
scene?
rolling around on the ground. He gets knocked
Yeah.
down in every single
Oh.
fight.
Oh my
But
gosh,
I didn't know
yeah.
if this one he did because he did.
Yeah.
Okay,
Mhm.
then I could see.
He does get beat to
I
head
mean,
a couple times.
He's so clumsy.
It seems to me like she's fighting back though. So like, I never
Yeah.
interpret that as like comedic, like slapstick stuff.
Yeah, and see, that's why I didn't know, because then there are elements like that where she is fighting back, and there she, you know, has gotten stabbed and stuff, and he's like, you know, the finger getting dug in the wound. Like, okay, so that's not funny, and so it just was such this weird intro to the movie for me to try to figure out what it was.
Yeah, no, I
Or
get
when
that.
he's like, "What's your favorite scary movie?"
Yeah.
Maybe that's what
Yeah.
got. Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
know, something like that. Yeah, I can see that. But
Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. There are definitely some stuff later in this movie that is like kind of hilarious. Like, so when we talked about like a movie within a movie, right? And we talk about like Jamie Kennedy as Randy telling Jamie to turn around when he, the actor, is named Jamie with the killer right behind him. But then on
Yeah.
top of that, Kenny's in the car watching this movie on a tape delay because this thing has already transpired. He's like,
Yeah.
"Turn around, kid." So turn around, and we're just like, dude, you're about to get taken. You're about to get messed up in this van. There's just so many layers to this movie, and it was absolutely beautiful.
It was like the audience was watching another audience on the other side of the screen. It was so weird.
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's breaking ground for Inception.
I thought it was absolutely hilarious when, what does he say? He's like, rule number 1. He's like, never have sex.
oh yeah,
And then everybody's like, oh, well, okay, all right, whatever. You know, like, boo. And they're like raising their glass. It's like, no alcohol for rule number 2. And they're like, hey, I need another one. It's like,
Yeah.
so, or what did, I'm going to refer to him as Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. What did he say when he was going to grab another beer?
I'll be right back.
He's like, I'll be right back. It's like,
yeah.
oh, I see what you did there.
brilliant.
Awesome. What was your favorite part of this movie visually for everyone?
For me, it was the scene when the parents look out and she's like hung in the tree, because that was such like a, okay, we're back to horror, and it was like a very, it was a scene that sticks out in my mind and an image that will stick out in my mind for a while. And it was a lot more serious tone than I anticipated. So I think it really struck a good scary chord to me when I saw it. So that was probably my favorite visual moment.
I would say that I really do like that scene, but it was so quick. It was so, I mean, you see it and then it's gone. I'm like, okay, was that okay? Like, I'm just trying to take notes, and I'm like, okay, that was a scene, I guess.
Intestines are hanging out.
Yeah. But you don't see it quite. I mean, it's far away. It's shot from far away, so I would just wish it was a little bit closer. But I do like that scene.
I kind of liked the moments in the movie where the killer was just kind of like out there in public, like just kind of like he would just be kind of spying or stalking. Like there's several moments where he's just there, and it's like, what?
Yeah, the gas station. He's just chilling.
Yeah.
And was that supposed to be funny?
Or there was the time where he like was
Forgetting
creeping
Yeah.
through the bushes, but he was like half punched over and kind of running.
Yeah,
I was like,
sticking out.
So what was your favorite scene period?
mine had to be the garage scene.
Yeah.
I love that scene.
Why?
It was just like everything about it to me was like hilarious because she's like, oh, am I supposed to be the damsel in distress now? Like, oh, I'm so scared. Like,
Please don't kill me, Mr.
please don't kill me. Yeah. And then she's like, okay, seriously, like, stop. Like, you can see the point where she's like, okay, is this not a joke anymore? I don't know. I just thought that scene was.
Then the beer drops and everything
Yeah.
gets serious. She's like, whoa,
Yeah, and
now.
then her
You just do
death-
the line.
Yeah, her death was really creative. I hadn't really seen something like
Yeah.
that before. But the fact she was trying to crawl through that small space, I'm like, how'd you think you were going to fit?
That's true.
But
I thought she was going to get beheaded. I think she was like looking up, so I thought she was
Yeah.
going to get like beheaded by the garage door. So it was very different than what I
I think
thought.
that might have been
Originally-
overdone if they did that.
Originally, it was supposed to be a fist fight, and the door was like she was supposed to like fall, and the door was supposed to come slamming down and decapitate her,
Oh, yeah.
or at least squish her head.
yeah.
That would have been right up Alexis's alley.
I know. I'm like, where is the gore? I mean, I like this whole movie, so it's really hard to pick a favorite scene. I like the garage scene. I like the first scene. I like all the nods to all the movies. But I have to say, I think going from a serious perspective, in the first scene where Drew Barrymore, they're talking on the phone with Ghostface, and he's like, I think he asked her name or something like that. And she's like, why do you want to know? And he's like, because I want to know who I'm looking at. And
Yeah.
honest to God, that would be the scariest thing that would ever happen to me.
Yeah.
And like,
I couldn't even imagine
yeah.
that.
And even like when I came here today, I could see, I turned my light on and my car faces my, our front window, and I could see my roommate clear as day. So I'm like, oh my gosh, there's just people walking by that are like, okay, you know, and just it's just like eerie. And that's why I always close them at night, because all the blinds are closed. So I don't want anyone seeing anything, you know. And I think that's what it is too. Or even when I was a kid, just looking outside in the garage.
Yeah.
My sister and I would fight over who had to go close the back door and pull the shades over, because I was like, hell no, because if I look outside and see something,
Yeah.
then yeah, it
I have
would
a
scare
story
me.
about this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a really unsettling story that happened to me in high school. There was this girl that got kind of obsessive, and I wanted to avoid her. And so at one point I was home doing whatever, my light was on, and she like called and she's like, hey, let's hang out. And I was like, I can't, I'm not home. And she goes, yes, you are. And I was like, deaf, and I was like, what? And so like I went over to the window. She's just standing straight out in the street, like looking up at the window.
That's
like that.
terrifying.
I was like, I'll just say I'm not home. And like just getting back, yes, you are. I was like, like,
Was she
Oh,
holding the
man.
radio?
right? Like that was so unsettling. I was like,
When I so it was like probably like a few months after I watched this movie for the first time. I used to, so when we lived out in Texas, we lived on like a pasture type situation. So like huge, gigantic yard. And then we had a spotlight that illuminated the back patio. And then the light from the patio ends, and then a little bit of wall, and then my window. So if you look outside my window, it's pitch black. And I never, like, this is around the time that I had my own room for the very first time. And I used to want to just like sleep in my sister's room just to be with them. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and just looking at my window and like feeling really creeped out. So I shut the blinds or drew the curtains. And the next morning when I got up and I was getting ready for school, my mom gets a call from my aunt, and my cousins who were down in South Florida at the time had a guy who had been standing outside their window watching them get dressed for school. Like that was just super unsettling. I don't know. And you know what? I still actually leave all my windows open. I don't know what's wrong with me.
Yeah, I don't like.
There's no way I could sleep with windows.
I even close my door, and sometimes after we've watched a movie, sometimes I'll even lock my door.
I think what I particularly love about that scene you mentioned, Alexis, is how much this whole movie borrows from When a Stranger Calls.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I was talking about the
I haven't
original.
seen it.
Never
I
seen
haven't
it.
actually seen that, but the one I did see still scares me. And
It's a
it
good movie.
traumatized me forever.
That movie I have feelings about because of
too.
the delivery of one line. But aside from that, it's a fantastic movie. So the original When a Stranger Calls, I don't know if you guys ever do want to see this, but there's a particular line where guy calls a babysitter. He's like, "Have you checked the children?
Ugh.
Have you checked the children?"
Is this with the young teenager she's babysitting them? And it's really, really nice house?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
Okay,
I think
maybe I have seen it.
Are you
Okay.
thinking about the more recent version?
Yeah,
Okay,
Probably.
Yeah.
And so she goes back and forth, and this whole thing. And then she gets this phone call, and she's like, "Hello, stop calling." He's like, "Why haven't you checked the children?" And then she's like goosebumps, right? And
Wow.
and like she's like, "What do you want?" He's like, "Your blood all over me," and like it's just really
Oh my
creepy.
god.
Sounds like a vampire.
Yeah, no,
Have-
it's really creepy, right?
We have to watch that movie because I have so many feelings.
We
and
will. We'll get to it.
Just
It is definitely on the list.
traumatized me.
I like the sequel for the original even better than I like the original, but we'll get there. So that movie, like that, it had that same effect, like goosebumps, like this very like sobering moment. Like she probably thinks this is a joke, and then it just snaps you back to reality, and it's nuts.
Yeah.
How did you guys feel about the pacing?
I thought it was good. I mean, it's a great first scene, and then it slowly develops. You kind of figure out some sort of backstory, and then there's like the last scene, which I think is just like icing on the cake. So I think the pacing was great for this movie.
I was always drawn to the mystery of it, and I like the development of the characters a lot. That seemed to be kind of frequent throughout the film. The ending scene, it kind of just wraps up everything, and I am surprised there's a sequel to it. I would really love to dive into that sometime.
The pacing is, I think, what you'd expect, but that final scene, I like the pacing where it's almost, you have to take what information you've noted previous to that and put it together in this final scene where it's all unraveling kind of real time and who's done it, what's going on. And the pacing of that was not so rushed that you didn't have time to kind of still scope people out and figure out what's going on, but it wasn't so slow that you were kind of wishing it to end. So I loved the pacing of that final entertaining scene. Like that scene was the movie to me.
Yeah. And for an hour and 50-minute movie, typically that annoys me and I lose focus after about an hour and 15 minutes. This didn't really do that to me. So for how long it actually was, I think it did a really good job with pacing.
Did you feel like at the end of the movie, I was like, oh, wow, that was fast?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, that's it? Because that's the same thing. I was like, damn, this movie is like an hour and 15
I know.
minutes. Yeah.
Yeah, that movie, like, it passes you by. And I
Yeah.
can think of no better, like, cinematic experience than a movie that you get lost in that much. Because even the stuff that happens in the middle is paced so beautifully that you're picking up information as you go, but you're still wondering when the next thing is going to happen.
Yeah.
So let's talk about those characters then. Parker, you said you like their development quite a bit. There are some feelings I have about a couple of them, but I'd love to hear about your guys' thoughts on just the characters as a whole, and then, Dan, your journey to kind of figuring out and seeing who it was.
I really liked the characters. I didn't really have any that bothered me. I especially liked Tatum a lot. I think they developed them just enough so we kind of knew who they were, but not too much where we're like, okay, this is boring now. It's way too much information. So I think they did a really good job with their characters.
Like, their characters are obviously lived in and people
Yeah.
live lives.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you can find someone you know in each of those. Mm-hmm. It's like a classic 90s, film. It's like, we have the jock, we have this, we have that, there's, my favorite character was Neve Campbell, which The Craft was my favorite movie, still is my favorite movie. So anything she's in, I'm like, yes. So I'm very biased in this, but I think they developed, like you guys said, like just enough where you're not sitting here totally bored or anything like that.
Fun fact, Neve Campbell was also in Lion King 2, Simba's Pride. She was Kiara,
Oh, really?
the daughter.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, as far as the character development, I was really intrigued because this mystery just kept building with all these different types of clues, and there were just moments where typically in a horror movie you're looking forward to the next scary moment, which is typically going to end in a kill. And it kind of gets repetitive, but this movie does some other things to make it interesting. For instance, when Sid's boyfriend climbs in through the window, and right after she's been chased, and she locks herself in the room, and then like the phone drops after they're hugging, and then she's like, whoa, and could this be the killer? And then that kind of like led me to think, oh my gosh, like that's another oh moment rather than, oh, somebody just got killed again. There was several different moments where each character had something being added on to whether or not they could possibly be the killer in the mask. And I really enjoyed that throughout it. So as far as the character development goes, and then leading up to the ending where everything just kind of unfolded, and as intense as the ending was, I think it really delivered for me. So,
oh, for sure, this movie masters misdirection and just building clues without giving anything away.
it really does, yeah. And I was actually really excited to see who the killers really were at the end. That was actually a really awesome moment. So
I always forget who the killers are.
Yeah.
Man.
Every time I've seen it, and then this time around, I was like, I never would have guessed. Like, I couldn't see it coming.
I always think
But
it's, yeah.
But it's so great because then when you know who it is and you go back and you think about every line of dialogue they had together, where Billy looks at Stu and is just like, subtlety. Like,
Yeah.
you start like, there's every moment in the movie that you see those two interact. It's totally obvious, but it's not obvious to the audience, but they know that they're both in on it together.
When like
I need to watch this again.
when like they
Yes.
have that moment where like they're in the video store and he's like, well, how
Yeah.
could he not be the killer? He's got killer written all over him. And it's like, he does.
yeah,
And
he actually
then,
did.
Yeah.
And then Stu gets really defensive when they're all in like
Yeah.
the quad area. He's like, I didn't kill anybody, and Billy's like, nobody said you did.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I was about to kind of bring that up. I did enjoy the fact that Billy plays the killer so on the nose that you kind of the whole time think, okay, it can't be him, because they're kind of mocking that, you know, it's the weirdo, and of course it has to be him. So you kind of discredit him for that, and then he turns out to be one of them. But then, like in the movie, like that blockbuster type, yeah, when they are kind of interacting back and forth, well, yeah, it's written all over him, and then they're kind of having that banter back and forth. I think that would be cool to see again from that perspective once you do know that. And I did not expect it to be two killers. I thought it was going to be a whodunit, not whom's done it. You know, like
Yeah,
And
yeah.
if you look at their interaction too, like in that store, you wouldn't think it'd be them paired together because
yeah.
they don't agree with each other. They're like fighting back and forth a little bit almost.
I think after the phone, like Billy's phone dropped, after that Sid was chased, it just seemed too obvious for the audience. So they're like, oh, it can't be the killer, right?
Well, then he gets stabbed too. Like he gets stabbed
Yeah,
and is
so-
bleeding, and, you know, and then you don't think it's a blood packet kind of thing, but you're like, oh, okay, well, it clearly can't be him. And then
Oh.
he comes back and is, and it's like,
Yeah, for some reason I actually saw the blood and I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't seem like, I don't know, for me that just didn't seem like real blood. I don't know. I know I'm watching a movie and it's supposed to be fake,
Like, it isn't.
but there's and it ended up not being, but I was just like, this just doesn't, it's just, I don't know why I analyzed it like that.
hey, that guy didn't actually
They
just
did it
die.
great.
Fun fact: they actually did stab each other. Sorry to ruin your fact or fiction.
Really?
Did they?
What?
No, I'm kidding.
No,
I was like,
no,
wow,
that's
oh
not
my
true.
God.
I'm being sarcastic.
They must have
for
got
Parker.
paid so much.
No, but he actually did get injured. So you guys remember that part where Sydney like stabs him with the umbrella? The stunt woman who was doing that. So he actually had like open heart surgery when he was a kid. So he has like metal wiring.
Oh.
So when she went to stab him, she stabbed him just in the wrong spot. So that pain that you hear is actually Skeet Ulrich being hurt.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and then same thing with like
Core lover speaks.
oh wow, that's so cool. And then when Billy hits Stu with the phone, that was an accident. But then Stu ad-libbing, "You hit me with the phone, dick." Like, that was his
was
actual
hilarious.
response. And Wes Craven thought it was so hilarious that he kept it in.
I liked that entire scene because
That was great.
it was like
Yeah,
they're
that's fine.
so off the deep end that they're actually stabbing each other. And then he's like, "You stabbed me too hard, man." I was like, that's pretty
He's
funny.
like, you stabbed me too hard, man. And then like
Yeah.
he throws the phone at him. He's like, "Oh, you just hit me in the head." And then he like jumps on the phone. He's like, "Did you really call the police?" And he's like,
My parents are
parents
gonna
are
be so
gonna be
mad.
"My parents are gonna be so mad."
Another ad-lib line
Really?
that Wes Craven just thought was so hilarious.
That was great. I
Yeah,
really
that whole scene
appreciated
made me
that.
laugh.
I think it just brought out how psychotic he really was.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I really appreciate it. But it was so funny.
Yeah.
Who did you guys think it was going to be?
And this sound, of course, logically, it either had to be Billy because it was so on the nose, or it had to just be someone completely random. Like, I didn't think it was going to be eventually like one of those, main cast members. I was like, okay, it's either Billy because they're trying to like reverse psychology it, or it was going to be something ridiculous like her dad or something like
That's
that.
what I thought. It was
Yeah.
going to be her dad.
The dad or the reporter for some reason.
Yeah.
Gail Weathers,
Yeah.
the punniest name on earth.
Mm-hmm.
When she started flirting, that was the cringiest thing with the cop.
I know.
She's
He's like,
Okay.
what did she say about his age or whatever? And
Oh yeah, he's like, I'm 25, and she's like, oh well, recent polls show I'm most popular in the male demographic between ages 11 and 24. I guess I just missed you. He's like, I'm 25. I was 24 for a whole year. I've seen this movie.
Yeah,
a lot.
I mean, and he got hooked. It was weird.
It was weird.
So were you both surprised then when it was Billy and Stu?
Yeah, the fact that it was two people totally threw me off. I was looking for, like I said, who did it. So when it was both of them and they were both kind of off the deep end and kind of not against each other, but actually stabbing each other, tried to get away with it, and he keeps stabbing him. Like, it was this interesting to see it like unfold, and I couldn't tell what they were going to do.
Yeah, I really think this is one of those movies where if you watch it for the first time and see how it is, I think you should rewatch it soon after to really appreciate the depth that those characters pulled off.
Yeah, I think with the ending to something else as far as like the unraveling of like who's responsible, who's doing this. I think it's very important to know or to note Sid's like backstory with her mom and everything. Otherwise, I mean, it might not have ever happened. It's kind of interesting. So
And that backstory gets explored more in
the
future
sequels,
movies.
really?
I was confused during the backstory because like you were getting, which I guess is crafty in a way, but you're getting bits and pieces from different people throughout the whole movie. So I'm like, what is this story about her mom? Like, her mom died, but I mean, what happened? And then it all comes together at the end, which I think was cool. I was just kind of like, okay, your mom slept with your dad, so you're gonna like, I mean, I don't know. I just was like, okay, this could have been more thought out, but like I'm saying, maybe that's the whole point of the movie.
Right.
So then I brought myself back. I'm like, okay, that's why it's really, not like a cheesy, but I'm just like, okay, really?
Yeah, I like the fact that you learn so many different things from so many different people for what the story ends up being at the end of this movie. Yeah, it could be a little
It's like a lot of
underwhelming.
gossip.
Right. Exactly. I think it's worthwhile in the rest of the movies. I think it's like a good through line.
Now I need to go watch them all, I feel like now.
Yeah, Scream Marathon. Let's do it.
I would keep watching more. It's not that I did. Everyone's like, yeah, Dan the hater. What'd you think? Like,
Yeah, right.
They're like, no, not any.
I think some of these things too, like I think seeing it a second time at some point would help it. And I feel like noting more and more and the things that you guys are pointing out and this lines up and they're like, oh yeah, it does. And I think it would be interesting to see the interaction between both of them throughout the movie once you do know. So I feel like it is helping like edge it slowly towards more of a solid slash without it being like a whoa slash. So it's definitely, you guys are getting it off the bare minimum slash area.
Okay. All right. What do you guys think was the best part of this movie?
I think the most pivotal part of this movie, in my opinion, was when Sid hands Billy the gun towards the end after she finds out like he's alive, I guess, or had survived. And then he goes to say like, oh, we all go a little mad sometimes.
Quoting Psycho.
It was
beautiful.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. I thought that was very pivotal because I was like, whoa. And then everything from there just didn't really, well, aside from I guess Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, with this whole telephone thing and getting stabbed and whatnot. It got really intense and everything started to really unravel quickly. So
Yeah, that scene in the kitchen at the end where they're stabbing each other was probably my favorite scene. It was really entertaining because once it's revealed that it's two, trying to see what direction they then take with it. Are they going to turn on each other? Are they going to stay? And it looked like for a minute Billy was just going to like take the other guy out of the picture and it'd just be him. Like I couldn't tell. So that was my favorite scene as far as entertainment goes.
I think my favorite part of this movie is just how woven into the fabric of its story the rest of the horror genre is, specifically with like all of its odes to Halloween. Surprise, of course that'd be my favorite part. Did you guys catch all those references?
I didn't. I would love
I
to watch
did.
this again so I could.
Oh my gosh, it's
Yeah.
so good.
There
Okay,
are
so
It
a lot of
actually
references.
made me laugh when she was like, "Why is Jamie Lee Curtis in like all of these movies?"
I'm like, yes.
She's the Scream Queen.
Yeah. So Kevin Williamson is a writer, and he was like broke off his ass when he wrote this movie. But he was a huge fan of Halloween, and his whole thing was, I want to write this story because I want to write a movie that's honoring the movies that I grew up loving, and no one else is making this movie. So there are actually little bits of the Halloween score kind of like mixed in subtly through this movie.
Wow.
And Don't Fear the Reaper, which is kind of like,
It's bent, yeah.
yeah, so it's like a little ironic because it's Billy ends up being the Reaper. So
Yeah.
it's like, yeah.
I noted that when I told Leah, but I thought that meant that he was going to die. And so I knew it was foreshadowing death of some sort, but it was interesting to know then, like, yeah, he was. Yeah.
Yeah, he's like kind of lulling her into this false sense of security. But that song plays in the car with Lori and Nanny are smoking a joint before they meet up with her dad at the store with the alarm going off. On top of that, in the beginning, when Casey is dead and the father is talking to the mom, he's like, go down the street to the Mackenzies. That is the same family name from the original Halloween when Laurie's like, we should go down the street, run to the Mackenzies and call for help or call the police or something to that effect.
One of the shots looking down the street with the bushes on the left and the sidewalk, it was very reminiscent of the Michael Myers standing halfway in the bush. to me,
Yeah,
so
for sure,
yeah.
man. For sure.
Yeah.
And then last but not least, you have Mr. Billy Loomis.
Yes.
Who is-
Okay.
yes.
Yep.
So Billy Loomis, an ode to Dr. Samuel Loomis. And his name came from Psycho because there's a character named Samuel Lewis who also stars Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. So it's like this really like gigantic web of just so much love for the horror genre. It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
This is why you can watch this movie, I think, over and over again because
Yeah.
I'm not picking up on half of this, and I'm like, I need to go home and watch this so I can
Yeah.
find out.
Yeah, and then especially just like Nightmare on Elm Street. So there's like the obvious knocks on the head with Wes Craven making a cameo, Billy climbing into the window like Johnny Depp, Billy's vaguely looking like Johnny Depp.
He does not look like Johnny Depp. Do not say that.
Oh my God.
Do you prefer Skeet Ulrich here in this movie or in Riverdale?
Ooh, he's hot dad in Riverdale. Hot dad.
gross.
Wait, there's
Jughead's dad.
Yeah.
in Riverdale.
what?
I know, right? He's the hottest dad ever.
So in the opening of the movie with Casey, and she talks about, I like Freddy, I like Nightmare on Elm Street, but the sequels suck. So Wes Craven sold the rights to the sequels to Nightmare on Elm Street before the first movie even released. So he actually didn't like those sequels.
Ooh.
So that was his little
Wow.
dig.
Dang.
That's awesome.
This movie is so brilliant.
Yes.
Like, it's so...
This is why it has rewatch value.
Exactly.
I need to look back at all
Exactly
this stuff.
that. Ah.
We're all looking at Dan like,
What's the
Like,
heretic
what
say?
do you
Yeah.
think?
are
So-
you going to watch this?
Yeah, I mean, so even with that, right? Like, so like the foreshadowing with Harry Winkler unmasking the two kids, foreshadowing two ghost faces, right? I think
Yeah.
even one of them has hair that's similar to Billy's. And then there's a part where Stu picks up Tatum, and she's like arm out, like, and it foreshadows her death in the garage door.
That's cool.
Wow.
It's so dope. It's so dope.
Another, was this comedy part? When he was talking to the two kids, was it supposed to be funny that every time he moved the scissors, no matter how it moved, it went shing, shing, shing? Like,
They did that.
What
Yeah,
was
the
that?
doors creaking and
Was
stuff.
that
I think they do
supposed
it
to be
on
funny?
purpose. Yeah, I think so.
I didn't know. I couldn't tell.
I don't know. I didn't even notice it. Didn't even bother
Yeah,
me.
even
It freaked
he
me
like,
out.
He like moves it like at first he like pulls it to the kid's throat and it goes shing. And he whips it the other shing, but then he'll like move it like an inch and it goes shing. Like no matter what.
Are you
I
talking
think
about
you're
the
probably the
principal
only
with
person
the-
that picked up on that
Yeah.
little sound effect.
Yeah, the
That's
principal
cool.
with the two kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's supposed to be,
yeah.
I think, mainly misdirection to make you think that he could be a suspect.
True.
I don't have it down for words what that principal said right there, but like about like dressing up as the killer and whatnot, and but I got a nod. Like I nodded to that. I was like, wow, this guy, like that was the perfect way to put things. It's
Yeah.
like you're expelled.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. Check your privilege, kids. What do you guys think was the worst part?
Just coming from a gore perspective, and I probably say this about every movie. I'm like, I wish it was gorier till we actually get to a gore movie. But I feel like it should have had more. And going back to that, when I was doing a little bit of research on this, like I heard that they had to take a few scenes out. So there's a scene with Casey in the beginning, the first scene, where her boyfriend's outside and he's in the chair. They were supposed to have his gloves, his guts, like spilling out over all over him. So they had to cut that scene out. They had to cut out a lot of the blood scenes. Like there's not blood splattering everywhere. It's like a lot of just like slash, like stab. And then the last scene where they're actually stabbing each other is supposed to be supposedly like way worse than it actually was, which I think is brilliant. But just to, I guess, get a rating or something. So
Yeah.
So I wish it was gorier. I wish they would have put that into it, but that's just my personal opinion. Also, like I had mentioned before, I wish they crafted the story a little bit better, just in my opinion. And it came off gossipy, which is the whole point. So it's like the things I like am actually think it's brilliant. So it's weird. Like I wish the story was crafted a little bit better, but the fact that it's coming from a 90s like teen slasher movie, it is gossipy. It is. It's supposed to be that way. So I also appreciate it in that sort of sense.
I actually agree on the more gore. I think that'd be really the only thing that would make this better, which typically I'm not the person to say.
Yeah,
I want like more blood, but like
oh.
I feel like it would have created even more of a contrast. Like you have these like way more gory scenes, but then like an even more comedic relief than you typically find in a horror movie. So I feel like it would have contrasted it even more.
Yeah. Or they could have went overboard and just had this blood splashing everywhere. Then I'm like, okay, that's too much.
Yeah.
So I feel like they did it good, but I just personally wish there was more.
Yeah, I agree.
I could have gone without the weather people. Aside from the scene where he's in the van and turn around, and he has to turn around. Aside from that, I didn't really like the weather woman's character that much. I don't know why. She seemed like, I just didn't. It seemed like she like was so overly concerned about being intrusive on a bunch of like kids' lives. It just was enough of a character to be there, but not enough of a character to like have a thing in my mind for this movie. And so I didn't really care for the weather.
Yeah, she's kind of.
I like how she's
agree.
not actually a weather person, but her name is Gail West.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, I mean I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. She any of you guys watch Friends?
I was just
Nope.
about to say she
No.
was in Friends.
Yeah. So Friends, she plays Monica, who's known to be like the nicest person on Friends.
Yeah.
But she fought to be in this movie, to be able to separate herself from that.
I agree with Dan on the Gail Weathers. The scene where she gets into the van and she's trying to escape the Ghostface killer, and I guess I don't know how the recording guy, like how he got on top of the van and like started sliding forward on the vehicle. And she's like, "Get your like fat ass like off the window." I'm like, wow, what respect. And then it was almost like it turned to comedy real quickly right there. And it was almost like, I don't think they should have made that part funny, because I mean there was like blood all over the windshield, and I was like, okay, no, you're kind of taking it like one of the most frightening scenes and making it like more comedy. I don't know if I mean, I definitely chuckled to it though, so I did like it, but it was different.
Is there anything else that you guys think could have made this movie better?
Not
I
at
don't
all.
think so.
Yeah.
I think they set out to do what, like what most movies don't. I think they did that. They executed that perfectly, almost.
Awesome.
Yeah, I really liked it.
I'm gonna be honest, the more we talk about this movie, the more I appreciate it. Actually, I was telling Dan a few days ago, I'm like, I don't want to watch this movie again. I'm sick of watching this movie. I hate it. And then, like, talking about it now, I'm like, I actually like this movie a lot more than I remembered liking it.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel the exact same way. I was
Yeah.
like, oh God, we have to watch Scream.
Yeah, that's
like
how
I've
I was
seen this
feeling.
a million times. And then I'm like, wow. And I think even us talking about it, I'm like, wow, there's still things
Yeah,
I
that you didn't
still
even
don't
pick
even
up on.
notice. And which I think is just brilliant. Just getting everyone else's perspective is awesome.
I think anybody who's into doing like horror movie reviews and they watch it from like this kind of perspective, it's so interesting to
Yeah.
dive into.
And you
So
lose
many
that,
things.
I think, with some movies now. It's kind of just, what can get ratings? What can do this? Or, it's not about how original can I be?
I just think they were having fun with it. So.
I think the discussion at some point has made me want to see it a second time. Maybe not like next week or within the next month, but at some point I buy it on seeing it again. So some of these things have
We're
helped
buying
bump
this
it up.
movie
Look what
for
we've
you.
done.
Yeah.
Growth.
Guess what you're getting for Christmas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gonna be the whole box set.
All
All
nine of them.
series.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the commentary.
Yes.
Yeah, and there was even I'm surprised you didn't like the movie as a whole. Basically, even just like its mentions to Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like that scene in the beginning with Casey with Ghostface behind her, and just like how that's like actually pulled straight out of Texas Chainsaw
Yeah.
Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
I just
Maybe-
don't think I caught that the
yeah.
first time.
Maybe you like it again on the second watch.
Yeah.
I'm
Might be like
curious
one of
to know.
those songs that you hear and you're like, man, this song's okay. And then you hear it like 4 times. You're like, love
Despacito.
this song.
That's how I felt about it. That's fine. All right. So let's go ahead and start wrapping things up. Now, before we move on to our fight or flight and our fact or fiction, who's our real MVP?
Tatum.
Tatum's
She
real
gets
MVP?
the real MVP.
Nice.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, she had the best death, and she was amusing, and she's my favorite character, so that's why she gets it.
She was such a loyal friend, too.
Yeah, she was.
And she's in Charmed.
Mm-hmm. All right. Who's everybody's top performance then?
Ghostface Killer.
Right?
Yeah, I know. I just poor guy. He's just trying to kill all these people and he was falling. People are throwing him. Like there's a scene where he's with Sydney and he's just falling everywhere. I'm like, poor. I actually felt bad for him
I know.
for a minute.
That scene where he's on top of Sid and she just like completely kicks him right before he stabs her.
Yeah.
And he just goes upwards.
Poor stuntman.
For me, it was Billy. I think because, pun intended, I guess, he always seemed to like cut into a scene really well. Where like no matter what was going on, he would kind of start saying his lines and doing his stuff, and it would really stand out to me. And it would he was a really good transition point between like, now it's funny. Okay, now we're getting back to hit. Like he'd say something totally weird. And so I think how he kind of came in was entertaining to me, and to see where he would fit in. He was my top performance.
I think my top performance was from Stu. I remember him from those Scooby-Doo movies because when I was a kid, like that's what I watched. That's the stuff I was into. And seeing him in this film, I was like, what is he doing in here? Is he supposed to be like the tough guy? Or he ended up being just really the weird guy. Mm-hmm. And I think he just kind of I don't know if he actually acts like that. Well, not act like that in real life, but I think he really brought that kind of character out. And that was really impressive to see how at the end he just went complete psycho, and I don't know. I enjoyed it.
So my top performance would have to be a tie between the two leading ladies in the film, one in runtime and one in just the opening, Casey and Sydney. Mm-hmm. So Casey, you have the utter horror and the terror that she conveys in that brief like 10 to 12 minute range, and then Sydney just mastering, like she wasn't your typical final girl. Like she was strong, she was capable, she wasn't ditzy. She also like wasn't a perfect like trope of what a final girl should be. She was hard and yet vulnerable and really just tough. Mm-hmm. And I think Neve Campbell just nailed that performance.
Surprising that they didn't use someone that's more ditzy. Like,
yeah.
I guess that's just too obvious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think even like Wes Craven said something to the effect of like, we knew that for this movie to be successful, we needed to find someone who was strong. And Neve Campbell was that. And so she had to do a lot of running around and fighting and all that while still being scared out of your mind.
She's a witch, of course.
That's fair. So let's go ahead and get into our next segment, fight or flight.
For this next part, I'm basically going to go ahead and put everybody on the show in a scenario, and we're just going to get responses and see how it plays out. So what I'm going to do this time, since we're doing Scream, is I thought that I could go ahead and look up an online quiz of horror movies. Now, in the beginning of the movie, there's that scene where somebody picks up the phone and they got to start answering different questions that he's asking regarding other horror movies. Okay? Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and run through questions. If it's wrong, we're going to go ahead and play it out as if
we died.
He's in this very room, okay?
All right, so we die. Who's most likely to die based on horror movie trivia?
Probably me. I don't pay attention to movies.
I don't either.
As I've seen a lot, but
it depends if it's like name the person who played. I'm out. Mm-hmm. I'm dead immediately.
So we'll go ahead and start it out, okay? So this one's pretty easy. What is the name of the main protagonist in a Nightmare on Elm Street franchise?
Freddy Krueger. Final
Freddy.
answer.
Nancy. Protagonist, not antagonist.
Oh, I thought he was.
Oh, yeah, we're dead.
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
You guys got really lucky.
Yeah. I still wouldn't have known Nancy.
I think I was expecting Freddy because he's like, this is an easy one. Nightmare, and I was like, Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, you guys just got strung up.
This is
Chris
the only one.
I would
I would never
known
have guessed that
that
in a million years.
No.
I'm terrible at names.
So we're all dead.
I'd be dead 10 times over.
Oh, yeah.
If the killer was just to bust into this room right now using what you had around you, how would you try to get out?
Jump out the balcony.
I mean,
I would jump off
clearly-
the balcony.
If all 5 of us just rushed him, like someone's getting stabbed, but outside of that, they're going down. Like you could probably get 1 stab off if 5 people were just
I think
rushed.
I might be
True.
the most stabbable. I think I'll be all right.
Yeah, but it's Ghostface Killer. We can all just push him.
Yeah.
You at
I
least
would.
get
True.
1 free kick.
I mean, you could just probably take one of these cables and just strangle them.
Just strangle him with it.
You probably could. Yeah. All right, excellent. Well, now that we all know that we're kind of mediocre at horror trivia, I thought. Oh, okay. So here's a question then. Who do you think of us is the most likely to survive a horror movie like Scream?
Are you just asking all, like, just us in general?
Yeah.
Just us in general.
I feel like you might be, Chris.
Why?
You've seen a lot of them, and I feel like you know the tricks and the trades.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Life isn't a movie.
That's true.
I don't know.
Not me. I'd probably die first.
I'm not gonna vote.
I mean,
myself.
honestly.
I'm
I
not
would
doing
like
the
to say-
You'd be
stupid
too scared to
stuff,
go anywhere.
but
Yeah.
I would like to say that I would survive, but
I feel
I'm
like
not
you
gonna
would.
vote on myself.
I feel like you would die defending someone.
Oh my god, that's so nice of you to say. Let's just all think that until the end.
I would be the guy who's like, I'll go check it out, and just gets killed immediately.
Yeah,
I'm like,
totally.
no, I'm gonna go see what that is.
I know, you'd like leave
It's gotta
me.
be something
Definitely
logical. Just walks out.
You'd
and
like
just gets
leave
stabbed.
me and go die,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
I'd die because I had nobody there. to
I
help
feel.
me.
I feel like Alexis would probably get away.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
because I'm that person. Every time I'm watching a movie, I'm like, why didn't they? Or I put myself in situations. I'm like, I'm just gonna hide in here. But I would just be that that person that maybe pretends like they're a table, like in the last movie we watched.
Oh.
That's probably how I get away. Is I'm just like pretending I'm a pole or something, like in the corner.
Just hold a light above
yeah,
your
and
head.
I would not breathe. I'd be like,
Mhm.
so it might be me. Sorry guys, I'm not helping y'all. Like,
Well, I'll tell you, I can't fit through a doggy door, so
Alexis probably could.
I can't.
maybe.
All right. So let's go ahead and move on then to our fact or fiction.
All right, get right into it. Fact or fiction? Approximately 50 gallons of blood was used in this movie by special effects.
More.
Approximately 50 gallons of
No
blood.
way.
Fake blood?
There was like no blood in this movie.
Obviously, okay.
I feel like I saw this somewhere. I'm gonna be honest with you. I thought it was 100,000, but I feel like that's a little
100,000 gallons of blood.
Are you
outrageous.
thinking
An
about, like,
Olympic
cabin
swimming
fevers?
pool.
This is why I'm not the math
Is that
person.
right?
I'm like
100,000?
something like 100,000.
How
Okay.
many 100,000? Is there like 100,000 ounces in 50 gallons?
That
or
right there is a
Well,
prom
then-
scene from Carrie.
Yeah.
That's true. Probably not.
I'm gonna say-
100,000 gallons like a
I'm not
I'm gonna say
participating in this
fiction.
round.
I don't think there was that much blood in it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say fiction.
Fiction.
fictions. It was fact.
Wow.
About 50
50
I
gallons.
knew I
Gallons.
should have said that.
Co-op.
Chris, didn't you mention that they like toned it down a bit? That was like Wes Craven's idea to like. See,
But
I
they
didn't
probably still use
even-
the blood. Though.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. You guys ready for the second one?
Ready.
This is okay. Here we go. Jamie Lee Curtis actually has a brief cameo as a parent in the news crowd outside.
I'm gonna say
So,
fact.
You say fiction.
There's just too many references for me. I feel like I overlooked a lot here.
Yeah, I wouldn't
Sure.
know honestly.
Fact,
but-
because she has to be in everything.
They did it with Wes Craven and Freddy Krueger, so.
All right, that's fiction. She does not cameo. in this.
Whoa.
I
It was
wouldn't be
Linda Blair
shocked.
from The Exorcist.
That is all. I need to watch this. I'm gonna go.
Never
home
seen
and
The
put it on.
Exorcist. I gotta
Yeah,
see
Linda Blair was the reporter that was asking, "How does it feel to almost be butchered alive?"
it.
Oh, it was her.
That's Linda Blair.
All right, fact or fiction?
Disappointed myself.
Caller ID use increased threefold after this movie.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I'm gonna
fact.
say fact.
I'm gonna say fact.
Yeah, that one was fact.
Yeah,
Did
I'm not
definitely
surprised.
increase use in that. All right. Wes Craven as the janitor obviously is the cameo and the nod to Freddy Krueger. Not only that, he was wearing the actual clothes used in Freddy Krueger.
That'd be awesome. So fact.
Fact.
I like how you go not on like if it's true,
Yeah.
that would be cool. So, all
That would be really cool. I'm gonna say fact.
right, that is a fact.
Oh,
that's so
yes.
cool.
There are a lot of other movie items and props throughout this movie as well.
If it wasn't fact, I would still like to believe it. That's really cool.
There's something with the letter jacket from Happy Days, but I don't know what Happy Days is. So
You never
I
seen
know-
Happy Days?
No, I haven't.
Wow.
I've heard
yeah,
of that,
but I
Someday
haven't seen it
Monday,
either.
happy day.
Yeah. Okay, so Henry Winkler was the Fonz in Happy Days, it was a show from back in the day. His leather jacket is hanging up in the closet in his office,
That's cool.
and he's
love
combing
this
his hair
movie.
like that.
I love this movie more and more.
All right, the original intended release date for this film was Friday the 13th instead of December 20th, 1996.
Can you repeat that?
Original intended release date of this film was Friday the 13th, not December 20th, 1996.
No, it's fiction.
Would it be cool if it was fact?
No.
Hey, we were released on Friday the 13th.
It's true.
Yeah, but like I don't know. I don't dig
I see
it.
you don't think our birthday is cool. That's fine.
I wouldn't compare Scream to Friday the 13th, so I'm gonna say fiction.
Fiction.
All right, it was fiction. I have no idea what day of the week even the 20th was. There probably was not a Friday the 13th that December.
Friday the 20th.
Yeah.
Friday the 20th before Christmas.
All right, and the last and final factor, fiction. The party scene, which takes up 42 minutes of the movie, was actually shot in one night.
I'm gonna say that's fact.
I'm gonna say that's fact too.
Yeah,
Because I'm thinking of
fact.
Stu's act, like who played as Stu.
All right, that is fiction. It's actually quite the opposite. According
Wow.
to the facts provided, it was only ever shot during like those set hours of the evening, and so they had to keep waiting day after day after day, and they would film and film and film, and they deemed it like the longest night in horror. So it actually
Wow.
was much longer. But the overall filming for this movie was actually only 8 weeks.
Wouldn't that be a bummer if it just rained the next day all evening?
Yeah.
Gotta wait.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would suck really bad.
that would.
Yeah.
Yeah. Drew Barrymore only took 5 days to film all her stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess I could see it. She's not like a huge.
Mm-hmm.
Man, it was only 8 weeks, but she took 5 days.
That's a kind
Those
of a
8
long
weeks for
time,
her
right?
first little scene. That's it.
Mm-hmm. It's an intense scene. I think they also
Yeah.
probably filmed a lot more stuff that they cut out of it too.
Yeah. Did you guys also know that Tatum could fit through the doggy door in the
No.
garage? She actually
Oh.
could fit through
I actually
there.
was thinking she could.
Yeah.
If she had a little bit more time.
Yeah. So she actually got pretty bruised up hanging from the garage door for like hours.
They had to nail her shirt to the inside of the door to keep her from like.
Wait. So that was actually her going up,
Oh.
right?
It wasn't a
Mhm.
double.
I mean, like whenever she so she actually went and hung through the door, but when obviously it was like a mannequin that got her head crushed.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah,
Interesting.
it wasn't something real.
She didn't actually
for
die.
Parker's sake, no.
Or it's like, I know it's not a. It's a movie.
Actually, Rose McGowan died that day.
Oh.
Just for the effect.
She was really committed to her craft.
Yeah, she was.
All right, so another rousing round of fact or fiction. Now, we do have one final question remaining, and that's probably just going to be for our audience. But, Dan, what is our question for the week?
The question for this week is, what is your first or favorite Halloween mask or costume that you ever wore or had?
It's definitely Zorro.
Zora? Yeah.
Zorro. Does everybody know who Zorro is?
Yeah.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just making sure. I feel like,
Yeah.
you don't know a lot of things
Oh,
about
I don't
things that
know
are
a lot of
referenced.
things. Yeah.
Not like that. Not like that.
I know. I think my mom would make costumes for my brother and I want to say I was a pirate or a ninja. Maybe I think my brother was a pirate and I was a ninja. But my favorite was during high school. I built like a 25 foot tall exoskeleton that I wore as my costume, and it was cool. It was this big ghoul that had like a 20+ foot wingspan, and I like
Jeez.
mounted it and like walked around. It was super cool, and I have pictures of it. And I couldn't walk down the street like more than 5 steps because every step I'd take, people would rush up to take a picture. But it was super cool because I could like wrap the arms around like whole groups of people, and like it was cool. It's my favorite.
Ah, that sounds so
Dang.
dope.
There's actually a haunted house here in the area that where these people dress up like that. They have these big like wings, and they come after you in this cornfield, and they just engulf you in these wings. It's the most terrifying
That's
thing because you
scary.
don't know what to do. You just kind of like freeze up, and kind of go to the ground.
Yeah, and actually, speaking of that, as this episode releases tomorrow, we will all be on our way to get spooked.
Oh yeah,
True.
we are less than 2 weeks.
It's
gonna be great.
Yeah, so we're gonna be going to Terror Behind the Walls in Philadelphia, and we're also gonna be go to Kersey Valley.
Kersey Valley.
Kersey
Yeah, haunted
Valley.
houses and
And there's
attractions.
gonna be a escape house.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting. So just the escape room, it's multi-leveled, and it's like 5 or 6 consecutive rooms throughout a whole house that you have to get out.
We will find out who can really survive, or your money back.
Excellent. Well, please keep in mind that, we want to hear from you. So we want to know what that favorite or that first Halloween costume is that you're super passionate about, especially as we get closer to Halloween itself. Now, a quick update for you guys. We are actually going to be releasing an episode a week for the month of October to commemorate the spookiest month ever and to also commemorate 1 year of Hacker Slash.
1 year already.
Awesome.
It's going to be super dope.
That's fast.
It is fast. It goes by in the blink of an eye, and we've changed a lot since then.
It's true.
And we've only been able to change because of the engagement we've had from our audience and all the feedback we've received. So again, if you guys have any ideas of how we can be better or specific things that you think we could improve, send us an email. Feedback is the gas pedal that keeps us moving forward. And you can do so by sending us an email to feedback at hackerslash.com. And even more than that, you can leave us a rating and review on iTunes, or you can actually join the party. And you can join the party by joining our community that we just launched on October 1st. And you can do that by visiting hackerslash.com/fam, F-A-M. We'll see you next time.
Bye.